"You're listening to my child," said the dark has a face. "What follows is not a campfire story, not a script, not fiction. It is a confession, a mother's account of something she wishes she had never seen, something she cannot forget, and neither will you. If you're listening in the dark, you may want to stop now, because some faces should never be seen." My name is Claire. I am 34 years old, a mother, a wife, and until a few months ago, a person who believed in ordinary explanations. Bad dreams, childhood fears, shadows being only shadows. We live in a modest 2-story home in a quiet cul-de-sac, the kind of neighborhood where every lawn is trimmed, every mailbox looks the same, and every parent waves politely while hiding exhaustion behind a smile. It's safe, or it's supposed to be. My daughter Lucy is 6. She's imaginative, stubborn, the kind of child who makes up songs on the spot and insists her stuffed rabbit has allergies to mean thoughts. Her bedroom is painted pale yellow, with stickers of clouds and stars peeling slightly at the corners. She sleeps with a small orange nightlight plugged into the wall, the only glow against the dark. It was late September when she first told me. I was tucking her in, smoothing the blanket up to her chin, when she grabbed my wrist. "Mommy," she whispered, eyes wide, "the dark has a face." I smiled the way parents do when children say something strange but harmless. "No, sweetheart, the dark is just dark. It can't have a face." She shook her head violently. "It watches me." I thought it was a nightmare, or maybe the shapes of her stuffed animals turning strange in the half-light. I kissed her forehead and told her she was safe, but as I turned off the hall light, I felt it, a prickle, like unseen eyes on the back of my neck. I ignored it. Parents always do at first. The first night it happened, I woke to her screams. Sharp, raw, the kind that tears through walls. I rushed into her room, heart hammering. She was sitting upright, eyes locked on the far corner. "It was smiling," she whispered. I turned on the lamp. The corner was empty. Only shadows, thick and pooled, the stuffed animals slumped on the shelf like lifeless sentries. "Just a dream," I said, though my voice faltered. Over the next week it kept happening. Lucy woke at the same hour, always staring at the same corner. I started sleeping in a chair beside her bed. At first, nothing happened, but soon I began to hear it too. A soft shifting, like fabric dragging against carpet. A faint giggle, not hers. Once, the bed dipped slightly, as if weight had pressed into the mattress beside her. I told myself it was exhaustion, that my mind was making patterns from silence. But then the nightlight sputtered. Just for a moment, but enough to reveal something wrong in the corner, not absence of light, but presence. A shadow darker than dark, shaped almost like a head. I remember the smell next. Damp earth, faint but undeniable, drifting from nowhere. Lucy clutched my arm, so hard her nails dug in. "See," she whispered, "it's looking at you too." It was the 10th night. I hadn't slept more than a few hours all week. My husband, away on business, thought I was exaggerating. "Kids get scared," he said over the phone. "You're feeding it by entertaining the idea." But I knew something was in that room. That night I decided to end it, to show Lucy and myself that the dark had no face. The house was silent. The orange glow of the nightlight bled weakly across the carpet. I sat beside her bed, her small hand gripping mine. Then it happened. The corner deepened, shadows thickening, forming outlines that shouldn't exist. 2 faint hollows where eyes would be. A stretch of shadow that curled into the suggestion of a mouth. The nightlight sputtered again. Lucy whimpered, "Don't make it mad." I stood. My whole body shook, but I forced myself toward it. "Leave us alone," I said, though my voice cracked, thin and useless. The air grew icy, my breath fogged. The smell of damp soil flooded the room. And then it moved. Not a trick of light, it leaned. Its head tilted, eyes narrowing, mouth widening into something too wide, a grin. The giggle came again, high-pitched, childish, but not Lucy-esque. The bed dipped behind me. She screamed. I spun, but there was nothing on the mattress. Nothing except her, clutching her rabbit, sobbing. I lunged for the switch, desperate, and the overhead light blazed to life. The corner was empty. I exhaled, dizzy with relief, my body trembling from adrenaline. But then Lucy gasped. "No, Mommy, don't, you'll scare it." Her voice was panicked, not with relief but with genuine fear, fear for it, not of it. I turned back toward the bed, confusion rattling through me. She was sitting up, her tears gone, her expression wrong. Too calm, her lips stretched into a smile that didn't belong to her face. "Don't worry," she whispered, her voice softer, layered with something else. "It says it wants to play." My stomach dropped, my mouth went dry. "Lucy," I whispered, "come here." But she didn't move. She tilted her head, mirroring the shadow I'd seen, eyes fixed on mine. "It says," she paused, smile widening, "it likes your face." I reached for her, desperate, but froze. Her eyes. They weren't hers anymore. Not warm brown, not human, they were black, glossy, endless like pits in the earth. She giggled, not her giggle, but the same one I'd heard from the corner. "It says it wants to wear your face now." The overhead light flickered violently, buzzing, then snapped off. And in the suffocating dark, the last thing I felt was the bed dipping beside me. You're listening to Trapped in the Elevator When the Power Cut. This is not a story about ghosts in an old house or monsters in the woods. This is about the places you walk through every day without thinking, the spaces you trust. A confession recorded in the dark from a man who thought he was just working late. But some doors don't open, some rides don't end, and when the lights go out, you'll realize you're never alone. Everybody calls me Daniel. I'm 32 years old, an IT analyst, nothing exciting. I work late sometimes because no one bothers me at night. Less noise, fewer interruptions. The office tower is mostly empty after midnight, just the janitors, sometimes security guards doing half-asleep rounds. That night it was just me. I stayed until past 3 a.m., running updates on a batch of servers. By the time I finished, my eyes burned from staring at screens. I packed up my laptop, stretched, and headed for the elevator. The lobby on the 22nd floor was silent. Too silent. No hum of vending machines, no vacuum cleaner from a janitor, just the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. I pressed the call button. The ding echoed down the hall, too loud. The doors slid open. I stepped inside, hit L for lobby. The doors closed with that familiar metallic shutter. At first everything was normal, just the dull hum of the motor pulling me down. But then, a jolt. The elevator lurched hard, knocking me off balance. My laptop bag slid across the floor. The car stopped. Not smoothly, not gently, like something had snapped. The overhead light flickered once, then cut out. A dim red emergency bulb sputtered on above me, filling the car with jerky pulses of light. Red, black, red, black. I hit the emergency button. Nothing. I tried the intercom, dead silence. My chest tightened. I told myself not to panic, just a power cut. Elevators freeze all the time. Maintenance would fix it in an hour, maybe two. That's when I noticed the mirror panel. It had always been cracked in the corner, just a spiderweb fracture across the glass. But in the red light, the crack looked deeper, wider, and the reflection didn't quite match me. When I lifted my hand to run it through my hair, the reflection's hand lagged. I told myself I was tired, hallucinating, sleep-deprived from working late. But then the light pulsed again, and the reflection's head tilted slightly, not in sync with mine. The air grew colder, my breath fogged. Then came the sound. A faint scrape, metal on metal above me, maybe in the shaft, like nails dragging against steel, slowly, deliberately. Scrape. 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 I pressed myself against the wall, staring up. The cables trembled, dust falling from the ceiling. The smell hit next. Burnt wiring mixed with rust, sharp and sour. The tang coated my tongue, made my stomach churn. I banged on the door. "Hello, anyone out there?" Silence. Then the faintest ding. Like the sound of the elevator arriving at a floor. But the car hadn't moved. The red bulb flickered. For half a second I wasn't alone. A handprint smeared across the wall opposite me. Fresh, dark, too high for me to have made. The light went black again. I fumbled for my phone. Dead. Battery at 40% when I left the office, but now nothing. Just a black screen reflecting my own wide, panicked eyes. The scrape above me grew louder, faster, something climbing down. When the light pulsed again, I saw it. Fingers, long pale, hooked around the edge of the cracked ceiling panel. Then dark. My knees buckled. I pressed myself flat against the corner, heart slamming so hard I thought my ribs would crack. The next flicker showed nothing above me. But the reflection in the mirror was smiling. The smell of damp earth filled the car now, thick and suffocating. I could barely breathe. Sweat dripped down my neck, but the air was ice cold. I whispered to myself, "It's not real, it's not real." The scrape stopped. For a moment, silence. Then the cables groaned, a deep, shuddering moan from above, as if the whole system was straining. The floor vibrated beneath me. The red light blinked twice, then went out completely. In the dark I heard breathing, slow, heavy, inches from my ear. I screamed, pounded the doors, begged. No answer. The cables snapped. The car dropped. My stomach lurched into my throat. The roar of air filled the shaft as the car plunged. I braced for impact, for bones shattering, for the end. But instead, silence. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in the lobby. Not the elevator. The glass exit doors stood wide open, night air drifting in. My laptop bag lay neatly at my feet. I spun around. Behind me, the elevator dinged. The doors slid open slowly, revealing an empty car bathed in red light. Empty except for one thing. My reflection, still inside, smiling. If you've ever sat in the dark with only a single candle between you and the unknown, then you'll understand why I'm speaking now. My name is Anna, and if this story finds you, take it as a warning. The dark isn't empty. The night that storm came to our farmhouse, I thought I was keeping my family safe. I thought a candle could hold back the black, but I was wrong. I need you to listen to what happened before the light goes out. I've lived in this house my entire life. It's an old farmhouse built by my grandfather with his own hands. People in town like to say it's sturdy, built to last, but when the wind howls like it did that night, the walls don't feel so strong anymore. They groan, they shudder, they almost breathe. It was late. The storm had been raging since the afternoon. Sheets of rain battered the windows and the roof rattled like it might peel away with the next gust. I tried to stay calm for the children. My husband had gone into town earlier that day for supplies, but the road flooded. He hadn't made it back. It was just me and the kids. The power went out just after sundown. No lamps, no heaters, just blackness swallowing the farmhouse. I lit every candle I could find, but the draft snuffed them one by one until there was only a single stub left, burning low on the coffee table. Its glow didn't reach the walls. It barely lit our faces. The children sat close to me. I could hear their breaths, quick and shallow, each one trembling at the thunder. I tried to smile. I tried to be the calm one. But then the wind dipped just for a second. The house grew quiet. And in that silence, I swear I heard something else moving in the room with us. The flame trembled on the wick, so small, so fragile. My daughter Elise asked if it would last until morning. I told her yes. But even then, I knew it wouldn't. The storm wasn't just wind and rain anymore. It was pressing on the house from all sides, pressing into us, and the dark beyond that little circle of light felt alive. I pulled the kids closer, wrapping the blanket tighter around them. They were shivering, though the air wasn't cold. Not cold the way winter gets. This was different. This was the kind of chill that comes from something standing too close behind you, breathing softly on your neck. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was only nerves, only the storm. But then Elise tilted her head and whispered, "Mommy, someone is in the corner." I turned so fast, I nearly knocked the candle over. There was nothing, just the walls stretching out into the black, the shadows twitching when the flame flickered. "No one is there, sweetheart," I said, though my throat felt tight. "It's just shadows, just tricks of the light." But even as I said it, I remembered something. When the power first went out, I lit the candle in the kitchen and carried it through the hall. And I could have sworn, just before stepping into the living room, that I saw a figure at the far end of the hall. Too tall to be one of the kids, too still. I had forced myself to keep walking, to keep moving, because what else could I do? If I admitted to myself that it was real, I might have screamed, and the children would have known how afraid I was. Now, sitting there in the storm with that one flickering flame, I wondered if it had followed me into the room. The wind screamed against the walls again, rattling the windows in their frames. The candle's flame bent low, guttering. And underneath it, just underneath, I heard it. A whisper. Not words, not anything I could repeat, just a breath stretched long, brushing through the dark. Elise heard it too. She buried her face against my shoulder and sobbed silently, not wanting to draw attention to herself. "Stay here," I whispered, though my voice cracked. "Don't move, don't blow the candle out." I stood. The floorboards creaked under me as I stepped out of the circle of light. The dark swallowed me instantly. The dark pressed against me, thick as wet wool. I couldn't see past my own hand even when I stretched it forward. Behind me, the candle burned on, casting its fragile circle, but I had stepped just beyond its reach. That was the first mistake. The second was listening. Because the whispering wasn't just sound. It was directional. I could tell where it came from. The corner. The farthest corner of the room, the one the candle's glow couldn't reach, no matter how steady the flame burned. The boards shifted, slow, one after the other, like someone stepping out, dragging their foot across the wood. "Anna." My name. Not shouted, not hissed, worse, breathed, so softly, so close, like it was whispered just behind my ear. I spun around so fast I lost my balance. My shoulder slammed into the wall. The whole room seemed to lurch with me, shadows stretching, shrinking, like they were alive. The kids gasped. Elise cried out, "Mommy." I forced my voice to sound steady, but it was. "I'm fine, stay with the candle." But my hands were shaking, and when lightning ripped across the sky, the flash lit the room bright as noon for half a heartbeat. And I saw it. There was something crouched in the corner. Not a man, not an animal. It was wrong. Too long in the limbs, too pale in the face, if it was a face. Its outline seemed to waver, like it didn't belong to the walls, the floor, the air. And worst of all, it was smiling. The flash faded. Darkness crashed back. And the thing wasn't where I'd seen it anymore. I stumbled back into the candle's glow, almost knocking it over. The children clung to me. I thought of blowing it out myself. Some insane part of me believed if the dark took everything at once, if there were no light to mark us, maybe it wouldn't see us. Maybe it would pass us by. But then another voice, quieter inside me, said, "The candle is the only thing keeping it back." So I crouched low, kept my hand around the base of the candle like I could protect it, like I could protect them. The wax burned down, dripped over my fingers, stinging hot, but I didn't move. The whispers returned, closer now. And this time, Elise wasn't the only one who heard them. My youngest, Nathan, tilted his head toward the black and whispered, "They're telling me to blow it out." Nathan's words cut through me like ice water. I gripped his small wrist so tight he winced. "No," I whispered, more desperate than I meant to sound. "Don't listen. Do you understand me? Don't listen." But his eyes weren't on me. They were on the black corner where the whispers seeped out, wide, glazed, like something was pulling him, tugging his mind right out of his body. Another flash of lightning exploded through the window. For a split second, the room was alive again, chairs, table, the framed photos of our family lining the wall, but every one of those frames had faces blurred, smeared like melting paint. And in the corner, the thing was closer, crawling now, hands, elbows, knees dragging against the boards, each limb bent wrong, each joint trembling like it could snap. The light vanished. Thunder cracked so loud the glass in the window rattled. Elise screamed. I pulled both children against me. The three of us huddled around the stub of wax like it was the last star in the universe. But the candle was dying. I could see it, feel it. The flame no bigger than a pinhead. Every time the wind pushed through the cracks, it bowed lower, sputtered, recovered but weaker. The whispers grew clearer. "It's only light. Blow it out. Come with us. We've been waiting." My breath shook. My heart felt like it wanted to tear free from my chest. I tried to pray, but my lips wouldn't move. My mind wouldn't form the words. The floorboards creaked, right behind me. I didn't dare turn. The wax burned down to the nub. Hot drops blistered my hand. I didn't let go. The flame stretched, shrank, stretched again. And then it guttered. One last flicker. And the room fell into complete black. For a moment there was nothing. No storm, no house, just void. Then a match hissed. My hands weren't moving, but one lit, bright and sharp, right in front of me. And in that sudden glow, I saw it wasn't me holding it. It was a pale, bony hand, fingers too long, nails black. The match hovered between us, just enough light to show their face. Or what should have been a face. Hollow, like skin stretched over nothing, eyes like pits, a smile too wide, splitting ear to ear. And behind it, the chairs were empty. No Elise, no Nathan. Just deep, wet indentations in the cushions. Like something else had been sitting there the entire time. The match burned down. I felt the heat against my skin. I tried to scream, but the dark swallowed the sound before it left my throat. When the flame reached bone-white fingers, it went out. And in the silence, the whispers didn't just call my name. They breathed it right against my ear. On it. When I woke, the storm had passed. The house looked the same as it always had. Same sagging ceiling beams, same old wallpaper curling at the edges. It could have been any other morning. Except it was. Or maybe it hadn't, I don't know. Time wasn't real anymore. The candle was gone, nothing but a melted smear across the table. The air smelled of damp wood and something faintly metallic like old blood. The house was quiet, too quiet. No wind in the rafters, no rain against the glass, just silence thick as a blanket. The chairs were still pulled close together around the table, but empty. The candle had burned itself down to a lump, a smear of wax hardened against the wood. My husband's mug was still there, half full of cold coffee. The kids' blankets lay crumpled on the floor where they'd huddled together. But the house was silent. I called their names until my voice cracked. I searched every room, flinging open doors, pulling blankets from beds, yanking clothes from closets as if they might be hiding inside. I even checked the cellar, though I'd sworn never to go down there alone. "Elise," I whispered, my throat raw. No answer. "Nathan." Nothing, no trace of them. The chairs were still there. I could see them faintly in the dawn light pressing against the curtains. The cushions bore the shape of bodies, deep, damp impressions like someone had been sitting only moments before, but the seats were empty. I stumbled from one to the other, pressing my hands into the indentations. They were cold, too cold. My legs gave out. I dropped to the rug, my hands clutching at the fabric like it could anchor me. But the rug was wet, as if soaked through with something seeping up from beneath the floorboards. I sat there until daylight fully bled into the room. The farmhouse looked normal again, harshly normal, as if nothing had happened. I tried the phone, but the lines were still dead. When I finally got a bar of service hours later, I couldn't bring myself to dial anyone. What would I even say? That a storm came and swallowed my family? That a candle was the only thing keeping us safe? Nobody would believe that. The photo frames on the wall were clear now, faces sharp, smiling, my husband, my children, all of us frozen in time. Even now, weeks later, I can't explain it. The police wrote their reports, shook their heads, muttered things about people getting lost in storms. They think I'm confused or worse, lying. But I know what I felt. The way the air turned sharp and cold the moment the flame sputtered. The way something shifted in the dark, too close, just outside the reach of the light. I live here alone now. The house creaks louder than it used to. Some nights when the wind presses against the windows, I swear I hear footsteps moving across the upstairs hall. And I keep a drawer full of candles. Because I can't stand the dark anymore. But when I blinked, just once too long, the faces blurred again. And when I looked away, I swore I heard it, just faintly beneath the quiet, a whisper, my name stretching through the boards of the house, through the cracks in the windows. On it. I can't leave. I tried once, I packed a bag, but the door at the end of the hall, it wouldn't open. And when I looked back, the candle was on the table again, a fresh one standing tall. I've told you everything. You don't have to believe me, most people don't. But when the lights go out, when the dark pushes in and you reach for a candle, you'll remember this. And maybe then you'll understand. If you're listening to this, then maybe you work late. Maybe you've stayed behind when the doors close, when the laughter fades, when a place that felt normal during the day suddenly doesn't anymore. I just want you to know you're not crazy. You're not imagining it. Empty rooms don't stay empty after hours. Some seats never stay cold. My name is Eric, and I was a projectionist at the Crescent Theater. That place was my second home. Until the night I realized home isn't safe when you're the last one left inside. I've worked a lot of jobs, warehouse, diner, gas station. None of them stuck, but the Crescent Theater did. I guess because I've always liked movies, or maybe because I like the dark. At least I thought I did. The theater wasn't anything special. 3 screens, seats that creaked when you shifted, floors permanently tacky from decades of soda spills. The carpets had a strange smell, sweet butter and something stale underneath, like damp clothes that never fully dried. But I loved it. Even when the lights dimmed and the projectors hummed to life, even when customers complained about the sound or the AC. I loved the control. From the booth, I could see everything, every flicker on the screen, every face in the crowd, every shadow in the aisles. The shadows always lingered a little longer than I expected. I never told anyone that. It sounded crazy. But some nights when the last show ended, I'd glance out of the booth and swear I still saw movement in the seats. Not people, not exactly. Just shapes, like the crowd didn't fully leave. I brushed it off, my brain filling in the gaps, right? A trick of the low light, the flickering film, exhaustion. Still, I started noticing small things. Coughs when the room was empty. A shifting seat after everyone had left. The faint smell of something sour, like old breath, that no amount of cleaning spray could cover. It never scared me, not really, not until that night. Tuesday, we were showing a horror flick. Not a good one, just another cheap scream factory. The kind that leaves audiences laughing as much as screaming. The final scene rolled out. A girl in the woods, running, tripping, crying. Fake blood, fake screams. The audience ate it up. From the booth, I watched them. Families, couples, teenagers. Their faces lit by the screen, laughing and wincing in the glow. And then I noticed someone different. Row G dead center. They weren't reacting, not laughing, not shifting, just sitting perfectly still. I told myself they were bored, or maybe asleep, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't watching the movie at all, that they were watching me. The film ended, credits rolled, lights came up. The crowd shuffled out, voices echoing in the lobby, sneakers squeaking against the sticky floor. Everyone left. The laughter died. The doors closed. But Row G didn't move. That's when my stomach sank. From the booth, I leaned forward, pressing my forehead against the glass. The theater below looked different now that it was empty. The red seats stretched into darkness, glowing exit signs throwing long shadows across the rows. Without the audience's noise, the silence felt thick, pressing into my ears. And still, that one silhouette sat dead center. I considered calling down, but something in me resisted, like saying anything out loud would break a rule I didn't know existed. I waited 10 minutes, 15. They didn't move. The projector wound down with a heavy click. The final hum faded, leaving only silence. The black screen stared back, flat and empty, but the figure below was still upright, still watching. I had to go down. Protocol, no stragglers, lock every door, check every seat. But as I left the booth, something odd caught my eye. The stairs creaked under my feet, the same creak I'd heard before when I was sure no one else was in the booth. This time, the sound came after me, like the wood groaned twice for every step I made. I swallowed it down, just an old building, just old wood. The theater smelled different downstairs. Not just popcorn or soda, but something sharper, sourer, clinging to the air. Like exhaled air from someone who hadn't brushed their teeth in years. I stepped into the aisle, my flashlight trembled in my hand. "Hey," I called out, "show S over, time to go." No response. The figure didn't twitch. I walked closer, shoes tugging against the sticky floor. "We're closed," I said, louder this time. "You gotta leave." And then it happened. A cough. Soft, wet, echoing too loud in the emptiness. I froze mid-step, my throat closed. The figure still didn't move. I forced my legs forward. My light skittered across the seats, cutting through shadows. Row G dead center. Empty. The breath caught in my chest. I swung the light again. Nothing, nobody. But the seat cushion was still pressed down, the armrest still tilted, like someone had just gotten up. And as I stood there, frozen in the aisle, I swore I heard fabric shifting. Not in front of me. Behind me. The sound behind me was soft at first, just a shift, a scrape. I told myself it was the building settling the way old wood groans at night. But the problem was, there wasn't wood behind me, just rows and rows of seats, upholstered in that old red fabric, foam sagging from years of use. Nothing to creak, nothing to scrape. Except someone moving. I didn't want to turn. Every nerve in me screamed not to, but I've got that thing, that stupid human instinct, where ignoring it feels worse than facing it. So I turned. Slow. My flashlight shook across the rows, catching glimmers of exit signs, empty seats, dust motes floating. No one was there. But the cough came again. This time closer. I whipped the beam across the room. Nothing. Empty rows, just the sound of my own breathing bouncing back at me. I tried to laugh, to say out loud, "Okay, I'm tired, I'm imagining this." But my throat was dry. The words came out cracked, broken. I turned back toward Row G. The seat cushion, the one that had been pressed down, indented, was rising. slowly, like someone had stood up only seconds before. I don't remember moving, but suddenly I was walking backward toward the aisle doors, my shoes tugging against the sticky floor, flashlight beam trembling in wide arcs. And that's when the screen flickered. Not all the way on, just a glow, pale and blue, no sound, no film reel rolling upstairs, just the screen itself humming faint light into the theater. And there in that dim glow I saw it. Not a person, not really. A shape. A silhouette in the back row standing, too tall, shoulders crooked like one side was heavier than the other. It didn't move, didn't walk, just stood there. Watching. I didn't run, not yet. Some part of me still wanted to rationalize it. A leftover customer, a prank. Someone had broken in, that had to be it. I forced myself up the aisle, every step sticky and loud. My flashlight beam wavered across the seats, jumping, jittering. "Hey," my voice cracked, "we're closed." The words didn't sound right. They bounced back from the walls, thin and warped, like the room was bigger than it should have been. When I looked up again, the figure was gone. The row was empty. My skin crawled with relief and dread all at once, like my brain couldn't decide if I'd been saved or tricked. I wanted to leave. God, I wanted to bolt out those doors, lock them behind me, and never look back. But procedure drilled itself into me. Projectionists do final sweeps, lock the exits, shut down the breakers, make sure no one's left inside. So instead of leaving, I made the mistake of going back up the stairs. Every step groaned under my weight, only it didn't stop when I stopped. The stairwell echoed a second creak for every one I made, just offbeat, like something was following a half step behind. I reached the booth, slammed the door shut and locked it. My hands were slick with sweat, fumbling on the knob. Inside, the projector sat dark, silent, exactly how I'd left it. But the screen downstairs was still glowing. Faint blue, pulsing. I leaned toward the booth window, but my reflection in the glass threw me off. My own pale face, wide-eyed, and behind my reflection in the shadows of the booth, something moved. I spun. Empty. No one there, just the smell. That sour, rancid breath. And then the screen flared fully to life. I staggered to the window, staring down. It wasn't playing the horror movie anymore. It was playing me. Live. From above. On the screen, I saw myself standing in the booth, staring out, hands shaking against the glass. And behind the me on the screen, a shadow shifted. Row G, dead center. Something was rising out of the seat. That's when my body finally overruled my brain. I ran. I didn't lock up, didn't turn off the breakers, didn't sweep the rows. I tore down the stairwell 2 steps at a time, heartbeat thundering in my ears, lungs clawing for air. I burst through the lobby, the smell of buttered popcorn hitting me sharp and sour. The neon exit sign glared red over the double doors. But the doors wouldn't budge. I slammed into them shoulder first, pounded the crash bar with both palms. Nothing, like the metal had fused shut. The theater hummed behind me. I turned, chest heaving. The screen was still on, flickering with my image, only now it wasn't live anymore. Not exactly. It was delayed. Half a second off. I lifted my arm. The me on the screen lifted his after. I turned my head. The me on the screen turned slower. And behind him, the figure leaned closer. I staggered back toward the concession stand, knocking over a bucket of stale popcorn. The kernels scattered loud against the tile. That's when the whispers began. Soft at first, indistinct, like a dozen conversations happening just out of earshot, then clearer, closer. Sit down. Stay a while. Don't leave yet. I backed into the counter, my hands gripping the sticky surface. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ripped it out, no bars, no signal, but the screen lit my face stark and pale. For a second I felt relief, something real, something mine. Until the whispers stopped, and a single wet cough echoed from the auditorium. Row G, dead center. I don't remember what happened after that in clear detail. Just fragments, my shoes dragging across the lobby floor. The screen still playing me, but darker, grainier, as if filmed from deeper shadows. The feeling that the seats weren't empty anymore, that the whole theater was holding its breath. Then silence. When I came to, I was outside, standing on the sidewalk, keys in my hand, the doors behind me locked, no light inside, no sound. I told myself I'd fallen asleep in the booth, dreamed it. Stress, exhaustion, bad fast food. But the next night when I showed up for my shift, I checked the seating chart. Row G, dead center. That seat was marked out of order. No one had sat in it for years. And yet the cushion was still pressed down. The armrest still warm. If you ever find yourself alone in a theater after hours, don't check Row G, don't lock up, don't sweep, just leave. Because the thing about empty theaters is, they're never really empty. Someone always stays behind. Someone's always waiting for the lights to go out. I live on the 9th floor of a building that should have been condemned a decade ago. The walls sweat in the summer, they groan in the winter, and you can hear your neighbors breathe if you're quiet enough. I've been here for 3 years, saving up for something better, always telling myself, just one more year. That night it was raining hard, the kind of rain that makes the whole city smell like rust and mold. My apartment felt even smaller than usual, the ceiling low, the walls pressing in. I lit a single candle on the coffee table, not for mood, but because the fluorescent ceiling light buzzed like an angry hornet whenever it was on. I'd had a long week at work, so I sank into my couch, half scrolling my phone, half listening to the rain hammer the windows. The hallway outside was unusually quiet. Normally, I'd hear footsteps, or the neighbor's baby crying, or the guy down the hall yelling into his phone. But tonight, silence. Almost silence. Every few minutes I thought I heard something like a shuffle, a dragging sound. Faint, so faint I thought it was just pipes. But then the pipes groaned too, like the whole building was alive and straining against itself. I told myself I was being paranoid. This building has always creaked and complained. That's what you get when rent is cheap. But the truth is, even before the lights went out, I felt watched. At 9:17 p.m. the blackout hit. The hum of the refrigerator died. My phone lost its connection. The buzzing ceiling light went out with a sharp click. Outside, the city usually glowed. Even at 3 a.m. there was never true darkness. But now, through my window, nothing. Not a single street lamp. The world outside had vanished. It was as if the building itself had swallowed me. I lit the candle, the wax dripping quickly, shadows bending in unnatural shapes across the walls. And that's when I realized something strange. The furniture, it didn't look like my furniture. The shadows seemed wrong, taller, stretched into silhouettes that didn't match. The outline of my chair looked like a hunched figure. The shadow of my coat rack leaned as though it had bent closer. Then came the smell. A faint metallic scent like something smoldering, but nothing was burning. Just me, my candle, and the stale air of the apartment. I tried to distract myself, telling myself I'd wait out the blackout, but then the noises started again. A drip from the bathroom, slow, too slow, like something pacing itself deliberately. A shuffle in the hall. And once when I held my breath, I swear I heard breathing, not mine, somewhere inside my apartment. I walked room to room, candle in hand, convincing myself I was just being ridiculous. Nothing was there. Nothing was moving. But as the flame flickered, I felt a breeze brush the back of my neck, cold and deliberate. I spun around, nothing. but the wax of the candle had dripped onto my hand, hot, sharp, grounding me in a way that both reassured and terrified me. Because pain meant I wasn't dreaming. This was real. By midnight, the silence was unbearable. It wasn't just quiet, it was heavy, like something holding its breath. Then I heard it. Inside my living room, behind me. A shuffle, then the sound of something dragging across the floor. I froze, my candle flame bent, as if something had moved past it. "Hello," my voice cracked, pathetic, but I had to say something. No answer, just breathing, closer now. The candle flickered violently, and for a moment I saw it. A shadow that didn't belong. It wasn't shaped like furniture, wasn't bent like a trick of the flame. It was tall, thin, and swaying as if it breathed. Its outline rippled against the wall, but there was nothing casting it. No body, just shadow. I backed away, holding the candle out like a weapon, though my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The metallic burning smell grew stronger, choking, filling my nose and throat. "Get out," I whispered, though I had no authority in my voice. The shuffle grew louder, dragging closer, and the shadow leaned toward me, stretching across the wall until it almost touched my feet. The flame sputtered, and in the moment before it went out, I swear I felt fingers, cold, long, brush against my wrist. Darkness. I don't know how long I sat there, frozen in the pitch black, my body locked, every nerve screaming. The only sound was my own heartbeat and the drip, drip, drip from the bathroom. At some point, exhaustion won. My eyes must have closed, though the darkness didn't change. I dreamed, if you can call it that, of whispers I couldn't understand, of long shadows crawling over me, pressing me into the couch until I couldn't breathe. When I woke, the faintest gray light seeped through the curtains. Dawn. My relief was so sharp it almost hurt. The refrigerator hummed again, power restored. The city outside was alive with muted morning sounds. I laughed, a broken, shaky laugh. Of course it was all in my head. The blackout, the silence, it messed with me. Made me hear things, see things, that's all. Just paranoia in the dark. I blew out the half-burned candle, grabbed my keys, and opened my apartment door. That's when I saw it. Drips of hardened candle wax. From my door. Leading down the hall. Trailing one after another, like breadcrumbs from something that had walked out of my apartment while I slept. And the smell, faint, metallic burning, still lingered in the air. I closed the door, slowly, quietly, and I haven't left since. Because if it can leave, it can come back. And I don't think it left alone. This is not a story you'll want to hear in the dark. This is not a story you'll want to hear alone. But once you press play, it's already too late. What you fear most as a child never really leaves. It just waits under the bed. Call me David, and I'm going to tell you something I swore I'd never say out loud. I'm 34 years old. I work a dull office job, pay my rent on time, keep to myself. I don't do drugs, I don't drink much, and I don't scare easily. At least that's what I tell myself. But I haven't been sleeping, not really. The problem isn't insomnia, it isn't nightmares, it's under the bed. Yes, I know how that sounds, childish, embarrassing, ridiculous. I thought so too. For weeks I told myself it was nothing, just the shadows, just creaks in the building. But it's not. I live alone in a small one-bedroom apartment. My bedroom is simple, a bed, a nightstand with a lamp, a dresser pushed against the wall. At night, when I turn the lamp off, the room is drowned in near-total black. It's the kind of darkness where your brain invents shapes just to fill the void. Except I swear the shadows in this room aren't invented. They're alive. It started 3 weeks ago. I was half asleep on the edge of drifting when I heard it, scratching, slow, deliberate, the sound of nails dragging across wood. My eyes shot open. The noise stopped instantly. I sat up, listening hard. My apartment is quiet at night, too quiet really. You hear everything, the hum of the fridge, the pipes shifting in the walls, sometimes the faint sound of neighbors moving around. But this wasn't that. The scratching had come from directly beneath my bed. My first thought was rats, or maybe some animal had gotten in through the vent, but when I leaned over and flicked on the lamp, the floor was bare. Just shadows, the kind of shadows that should retreat when light hits them, but the darkness beneath my bed seemed to drink it in. I told myself I was imagining it, turned off the lamp, lay back down. Minutes later I heard it again, longer this time, almost playful. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I didn't sleep that night. The scratching came back the next night, and the next. By the end of the week, it wasn't just scratching anymore. It was whispers. At first faint, like the memory of a voice, then clearer. Too many voices, all speaking at once. I couldn't make out the words, but the rhythm was wrong, too fast, too inhuman, like a hive buzzing in unison. I shoved in earplugs, didn't help. The whispers weren't just sound, they were inside my head. I tried to rationalize, stress, sleep deprivation, maybe even a hallucination, but stress doesn't explain the cool draft that began rising from beneath the bed. A constant, icy breath that smelled like dust and something sour, rotting. One night, half mad with exhaustion, I decided to face it. I crouched down, heart hammering, and lifted the bed skirt. Nothing. Just darkness. But the longer I looked, the more wrong it seemed. The shadows didn't stop at the wall like they should have. They stretched on like the space beneath my bed was deeper than the floor. A void. I swear, for a split second I saw fingers, pale and thin, curling back out of sight. I slammed the lamp on and didn't turn it off again until dawn. The next day I considered moving, but how do you explain that to a landlord? Hi, yeah, I need to break my lease because my bed is haunted. Besides, some stupid pride in me didn't want to give in. I was an adult. Adults don't run from shadows. That evening, though, I ran into my neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez. Sweet old woman, lived down the hall for decades. She eyed me with concern. "David, you look sick," she said. "You sleeping at all?" I laughed it off, but she didn't smile. Her eyes lingered too long. Then she leaned in and whispered, "Don't let it call your name." I froze. What? But she shook her head, muttering something in Spanish, and shuffled away. That night I heard it, clear as day. A whisper rising from the floor. "David." My name. The bed creaked as though something pressed against the underside. The mattress shifted. My skin went ice cold. I didn't dare look. I lay there sweating, sheets clutched to my chin like a child. I don't know when I passed out. The days blurred, work suffered. My eyes grew sunken, my coworkers asked questions, I lied. But at night the whispers grew stronger, the scratching faster, the smell worse. One evening, desperate, I poured salt around the bed. Something I'd read online. Superstitions, protections, wards. I didn't believe in any of it until that night when the whispers turned into shrieks. The air grew heavy, suffocating. And the scratching, oh God, the scratching didn't stop. It became furious, clawing like an animal trapped in a cage. The bed frame shook. I sat there, hands over my ears, whispering prayers I hadn't said since childhood. Then silence. For the first time in weeks, I fell asleep. But peace never lasts. At 3:17 a.m., I woke to the bed sinking slightly beside me, as if someone invisible had lain down. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. And in the darkness, right by my ear, a whisper clear as crystal. "Get out." I broke. The next morning, I bought the brightest flashlight I could find. If the thing wanted me, it would have to show itself. That night I sat on the edge of the bed, flashlight in hand, waiting. Hours passed. Nothing. No whispers, no scratching, just silence. Finally, near dawn, I gathered my courage. My hands shook as I clicked the flashlight on. Slowly, I leaned over the side of the bed. The beam cut through the shadows. And I froze, because lying there beneath my bed was me. Another David, pale, wide-eyed, whispering. His lips moved, shaping the words I knew before I heard them. Get out of my bed. My flashlight slipped from my hand, rolling away. The shadows surged upward like smoke, swallowing the light, swallowing me. The mattress gave way beneath me, dragging me down into the cold void. I tried to scream, but the whispers drowned it out. The last thing I felt was a hand, my own hand, grabbing my ankle and pulling me under. If you've ever walked the halls of a hospital at night, you know the silence feels wrong, too empty, too heavy, like the walls themselves are waiting for something. I was a nurse. I worked the midnight shift. I thought hospitals were safe until the wing they told me to check alone. This is my story, and if you hear it, you might never walk those halls again. My name is Evelyn Carter, registered nurse, night shift. People think hospitals are always alive, buzzing with urgency and noise, but past midnight, the place feels like a tomb. That night I was assigned to monitor the East Wing, a half-abandoned stretch of the hospital they kept for overflow when rooms filled up. Lately, it hadn't been used much. Too expensive to staff, too unsettling to patients. The corridors there stretched long and narrow, lined with doors to rooms that hadn't housed anyone in months. The air smelled of antiseptic so sharp it burned the nose, but underneath lingered something damp, metallic, almost like blood left too long in the air. Fluorescent lights buzzed above me, flickering in sickly intervals. Every time one blinked out, shadows swallowed the hallway. Wheelchairs sat in the corners, gurneys shoved against walls, casting distorted silhouettes that reached across the floor. I kept telling myself it was fine. Hospitals at night are creepy, sure, but I was a professional, rational, science-minded. Still, when I heard the first groan echo down the empty hall, my heart skipped. It was faint, muffled, could have been pipes, could have been air in the vents. I forced a laugh to myself, checked my clipboard, and kept walking. But when the groan came again, low, drawn out like someone straining to breathe, I stopped. "Hello," I called out, my voice bouncing off tile and plaster. Nothing. Just the hum of failing lights. I shook it off, but the question formed in my mind and would not leave. Why does an abandoned wing sound like it still has patience? The further I went, the colder it got. A draft curled up the back of my neck, making me shiver even under my scrubs. My rubber soles squeaked against the tile with each step. Halfway down the corridor, I froze. A wheelchair, empty, was rolling slowly across the hall. No one pushed it, no incline to guide it. It just moved, gliding silently until it bumped against the opposite wall. My clipboard dug into my fingers. I'd gripped it like a shield without realizing. This building shifts, I whispered to myself. Air currents, drafts, that's all. But when I stepped forward, the overhead light flickered violently. For a split second, the patient rooms lining the hall weren't empty. I saw shapes inside, figures sitting upright in beds, their faces turned toward me. The light steadied, the rooms were bare. I pressed forward, faster now. Every squeak of my shoes seemed deafening, every breath too loud. Then came the metallic clang, a sharp, echoing sound from somewhere deeper in the dark, like a gurney crashing into a wall. I jumped, nearly dropped my clipboard. Rational brain, old equipment shifting. Other part of me, you're not alone here. I forced myself on, one door at a time. I peeked into each room, beds stripped, monitors unplugged, shadows stretching long. The smell of bleach mixed with something faintly sweet, cloying, like rotting fruit. Then I saw it. At the far end of the corridor, a shadow, tall, human-shaped, perfectly still. I blinked, it didn't move. But when the overhead bulb flickered again, the shadow remained exactly the same, unshaken by the light. Wrong. "Hello," I tried, my voice trembling. No response. Just the slow squeak of wheels. Another wheelchair rolled out of a side room, turning toward me on its own. That's when I remembered something an old nurse had told me on my first shift years ago. Don't ever get stuck alone in a dead wing. The walls remember. The patients don't always leave. At the time, I laughed it off, but now I wasn't laughing. I turned to go back. The corridor behind me was empty, too empty. The lights buzzed, flickered again. And then faint through the vents above, I heard it, a chorus of low groans, not one patient, dozens. By the time I reached the nurse's station, I was shaking. I tried to radio for maintenance. Static. Tried my cell, no signal. The board said the breaker box was at the very end of the east wing, right where that unmoving shadow waited. I didn't want to go. Every nerve screamed not to. But the corridor lights were dying fast, plunging the wing into near-total darkness. If I didn't restore power, I'd be stuck blind in that hallway. So I forced my legs forward. As I walked, the sounds grew worse. The squeak of invisible wheels moving just out of sight, the metallic clatter of beds shifting, and faint but clear the sound of whispers. Not words I could understand, just murmuring, layered, too many voices at once. When I passed one of the rooms, I glanced inside. The bed was upright now, and there was weight in it, a shape beneath the sheets. I stumbled back, my breath caught in my throat. The light above me flickered again, plunging the room into shadow. When it returned, the bed was empty. I reached the end of the hall, where the breaker box sat in a recessed alcove. My hand shook as I reached for it. Behind me, the groaning grew louder. The squeak of wheels approached. I flicked the switch. The lights blazed back to life. And the hallway was full. Both sides lined with wheelchairs, patients sitting upright, silent, staring at me. Their eyes were blank, dead. Their skin pale, stretched too tight. Dozens of them, all facing me as though they'd been waiting. My heart pounded so hard I nearly fainted. Then the lights flickered, once, twice. And when they steadied again, the wheelchairs were empty. Except one. Directly behind me. I felt the cold draft brush my neck. I didn't want to turn, didn't want to see. But I did. The chair sat inches away, its seat occupied by something slumped forward, head hanging, arms limp. Slowly, its chin lifted, eyes rolled open, black, endless pits. It smiled. I dropped my clipboard. The lights cut out. The last sound I heard was the squeak of wheels, rolling closer. What if the shadow you see at night isn't yours? What if the footsteps that echo aren't just in your head? This is not just a ghost story, it's a confession. A true account of the night I realized something had followed me home, something I could not see yet could never escape. Press play, if you dare, and remember, when you leave work tonight, check the dark corners of the parking lot. Because once the darkness follows you home, it never leaves. I've always hated the night shift. The hours chew away at you in a way that no amount of coffee can fix. Your body feels out of sync with the world, like you're living in the spaces between other people's lives. But the pay was decent, and in a small town where jobs didn't come easy, I couldn't say no. It was just past 2 a.m. when I clocked out. The office was a squat, rectangular building at the edge of a half-abandoned strip mall, where most of the storefronts had long since shuttered. Only the 24-hour pharmacy stayed alive, its flickering neon sign buzzing with the persistence of something too stubborn to die. That night the air was sharp with cold, the kind that creeps under your jacket and makes every breath a small cloud. The parking lot stretched ahead of me like a black lake, broken only by the dim orange pools of light from the street lamps. And that's when I noticed it. The silhouette. A shape just at the edge of the furthest light, not moving, not walking, just standing. I told myself it was nothing, probably a car parked crooked, or maybe my eyes catching the jagged outline of a tree. I forced a laugh that sounded too brittle in the empty night and started across the lot. My footsteps echoed, click, click, click on the pavement. And then another set. Perfectly matched. I froze hard in my throat. The parking lot was empty. The silhouette was gone. Or closer. I'm not the kind of person who scares easily, or at least I never used to be. My friends would tell you I'm practical, maybe even boring. My name is Sarah Miller, and I lived with my older brother, Mike, in a rented duplex. He worked construction, and when our schedules lined up, he'd give me rides to work. But most nights, like this one, he was dead asleep by the time I came home. Mike was the kind of guy people liked instantly. Broad-shouldered, always smiling, he carried the kind of calm that felt like a shield. I envied that. I was quieter, softer, the kind of girl who kept to the edges of parties. That night, as I got into my car and locked the doors with shaky hands, I kept telling myself I was being ridiculous. People see things in shadows all the time. I drove home fast, my eyes glued to the rearview mirror, convinced that if I blinked, I'd see something sitting in the back seat. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my pulse was still drumming in my ears. I told myself I'd laugh about it in the morning. But the darkness didn't stay in the parking lot. It followed me. That was the night it stepped into the house. I woke at 3:11 a.m. to the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate, just outside my bedroom door. At first I thought it was Mike, but the steps, they didn't sound like him. They were too careful, too heavy. I whispered, "Mike." Silence. The doorknob rattled once, not turning, just rattling like fingers brushing against it. My throat locked. The air grew colder. My breath came out in pale threads. And then I saw it, a shadow in the corner of my room, darker than the dark, as though it wasn't cast but made. I pulled the blanket over my head like a child. The footsteps stopped. But the silence pressed heavier, like something was listening. When I finally slept, my dreams weren't mine. I dreamed of street lamps buzzing, of footsteps chasing mine, of a voice in the dark whispering my name. The next morning, I told Mike over breakfast. He smirked. "You sure it wasn't me? I got up around 3 for water." But he avoided my eyes. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the sound of those footsteps, hesitant, deliberate, didn't match the lazy shuffle of someone half asleep. That day at work, the shadows on the security monitors made my stomach knot. A flicker in the corner, a distortion when nothing should have moved. When I left for home, the lot was waiting, empty, silent, but I could feel it, watching. And then I realized something chilling. Every time I turned my head, the streetlight shadows bent, as if they leaned toward me. By the third night, I understood it wasn't random. It had rules. 1, it never showed itself fully in light, always just at the edge. 2, it copied sound, my footsteps, my breathing, sometimes even my voice. 3, it wanted closer. The first time I heard it whisper, I froze. The voice was mine, perfect, but wrong. "Sarah." I told myself I imagined it, but the next morning my phone recorder, left on by accident, played it back. My breathing filled the room. And then another breath. Low, ragged, right next to me. Mike tried to laugh it off, but his hands trembled when he lit a cigarette. He heard it too. Sleep became impossible. Every night I felt it nearer. One night my blanket tugged tight across my chest, as though invisible hands pressed me down. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. My eyes darted helplessly toward the corner, where a silhouette swelled thicker than shadow. I prayed for dawn. When the first light bled through the blinds, it melted away. But not before I heard it whisper again, this time behind my ear. "Mind." Desperation drove me to ask the pharmacy clerk, Jenny, if she'd ever seen anything strange in the lot. Her face drained. "You too," she whispered. She told me she'd seen a man-shaped shadow that never matched the streetlight's angle. She heard her name whispered in her own voice. She woke to footsteps circling her bed. Her eyes glistened. "It doesn't leave, Sarah. Once it follows you home, it belongs to you." The days blurred. Every reflection betrayed me. Sometimes my smile lagged, sometimes my eyes blinked too late. Mike begged me to get help. "You're scaring yourself." But therapy can't fix what watches you when no one else can see. I started locking my door, sleeping in bursts, but no lock mattered. The footsteps came anyway. One night I woke to find the door open an inch. The sound of breathing, my own, doubled filled the room. I decided to fight back. I left every light blazing, my phone recording. At 3:12 a.m. the lights flickered. Once, twice, then darkness. It walked down the hall. The air pressed against me like water, suffocating, crushing. I tried to scream, but my voice didn't come. The last thing I heard before blacking out was my own voice whispering into my ear. "Sarah." Morning came like nothing had happened. Sunlight slipped through the blinds, sharp and ordinary, cutting across the floor in neat lines. For a moment I almost convinced myself it had been a dream, just exhaustion, sleep paralysis, a bad trick of the mind. The coffee pot gurgled in the kitchen. Mike had already left for work, his empty mug on the counter. It should have been comforting, it was. Because everything looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. The silence of the house wasn't empty anymore. It was waiting. When I brushed my teeth, my reflection felt off. Not wrong enough for anyone else to notice, just delayed. Like my smile stretched a half-second too late. Like my eyes weren't following exactly what I was doing. And maybe it's nothing. Maybe it really is just the stress of night shifts, the caffeine, the long hours under fluorescent lights. That's what I'll tell myself when I leave for work tonight. That's what I'll say when I hear the footsteps behind mine again in the parking lot. But deep down I know. It followed me home. And once it does, it never really leaves. You're listening to When the Campfire Went Out. This isn't about legends or ghost stories. It's about one night deep in the woods where the dark pressed in and the fire failed us. I'll tell you everything, but I need you to promise one thing. Never let the fire die. Because once the light is gone, it sees you. My name is Jordan. I was 27 when it happened. Just a regular person, office job, bills, friends I saw too little of. When Chris suggested we do one last camping trip before fall really set in, I said yes without hesitation. There were 5 of us, Chris loud and restless, always cracking jokes. Sam quieter, the one who planned the route. Mia, who brought more snacks than gear. Tyler, who acted like he'd been raised by wolves but had only ever camped twice. And me. I was the one who always carried extra matches. We hiked 5 miles off the road, through pine and oak, until we reached the clearing. The fire pit was already there, blackened from others before us. We set up tents, cooked hot dogs, shared a bottle of whiskey. The woods felt endless but safe, like a wall of silence wrapping around our laughter. When the fire burned high, everything seemed fine, but the stars never came out. Clouds smothered the sky, and every now and then when the flames dipped, I swore I heard something in the tree line, a snap too deliberate to be wind. I told myself it was just animals, but deep down I remembered something my grandfather once said: the woods keep secrets. Don't stay after the fire goes out. Around midnight, the fire shrank to glowing embers. The warmth faded, leaving only the smell of smoke and damp earth. We argued about who would grab more wood, but no one wanted to step into the dark. That's when the first sound came. A branch snapped close. We all froze. Tyler laughed nervously. "Deer," he said, though his voice cracked. Then another snap on the opposite side, something circling. Mia pulled her sleeping bag closer to the pit. Her phone screen lit her face, eyes wide. Guys, it feels wrong. The air was colder now, wind cutting sharp across the clearing. The trees loomed like giants, their outlines shifting. The ember glow stretched long shadows across the ground, distorting our shapes into something monstrous. Sam whispered, "Did you hear that?" A rustle in the leaves, slow, measured. We shined flashlights into the trees. Nothing, just black trunks, endless rows, the light swallowed whole after a few feet. But when Chris lowered his beam, I saw it, a figure between two trees. Not moving, not breathing. I blinked, gone. "Just tired," I muttered, but my voice sounded hollow even to me. The smell reached us next. Wet rot, earthy, like something long buried had been dug up. One by one, our phones lost signal. Then batteries, screens fading out until only the embers lit our faces. And then came the whisper. Not from us, from the woods. Faint, stretched, like a word dragged too thin. "Jordan." I froze. No one else heard their name, just mine. The fire died. Just like that. No warning, no glow. The pit sank into black, leaving us blind. Panic set in immediately. Chris cursed, fumbling with a lighter, sparks. Nothing caught. The air was too damp, the wood too wet. In the dark, we turned on each other. Tyler accused Sam of stepping on the fire. Sam swore it wasn't him. Mia cried, saying she heard footsteps behind her. We lit a phone screen, a dim rectangle of light. For 2 seconds I saw everyone's faces, pale, terrified. Then the screen went black. Branches snapped, closer, surrounding. Something breathed, heavy and wet, just behind my shoulder. I spun but saw only void. "Stop messing with us," Chris yelled into the dark, his voice shook. Then a scream, Tyler S., short, cut off too quickly. We shined the last match. The flame hissed weakly, revealing the circle of sleeping bags. Tyler's was empty, the fabric collapsed as if he'd never been there. The match burned my fingers, I dropped it. Darkness swallowed us whole. Then the whispers multiplied. Not one voice, but dozens, some high, some low, circling, repeating, words I couldn't understand. Mia clutched my arm. "Jordan, I think they're taking us." Another scream, this time Sam's, choked, then gone. Chris grabbed my wrist, his nails dug deep. "Don't let go," he begged. But the ground beneath us shifted, cold, damp, like something was crawling under the soil. Then he was gone too, his grip vanished. I was alone. I scrambled for the pack. Hands shaking, I found the small box of matches, only 3 left. The first snapped in my trembling fingers. The second flared weakly, just long enough to see Mia's sleeping bag empty, her scarf still crumpled inside. I was the last one. The flame died. And then I felt them, not one thing but many, moving just out of reach, breathing in unison, the cold rush of air as they closed the circle. Whispers pressed into my ears, my skull, my chest. Some laughed. Some hissed. Some called my name again and again until it didn't sound like my name anymore. I lit the final match. The flame shuddered to life, tiny and weak between my fingers. I cupped my hand around it, desperate to protect that fragile glow. The match hissed, sulfur burning my nose, and in that moment of trembling light I turned in a frantic circle, scanning everything. Every sleeping bag was empty. Chris's hoodie, the one he never took off, lay crumpled on the dirt as if he had just stepped out of it. Mia's scarf still clung to her pillow, her flashlight resting uselessly on top. Sam's boots were half tipped over by the fire pit, the laces splayed. Tyler's bag sagged flat, abandoned. It looked like they'd all gotten up at the exact same time and walked into the trees together. But I hadn't heard them go. I hadn't seen them leave. The matchlight flickered, shadows jerking across the trees. For an instant I thought I saw faces there, not clear, not whole, just impressions. A nose, a grin too wide, empty eyes staring back at me. Then the flame guttered lower and they were gone. My throat closed up. My chest heaved with shallow, rapid breaths. I whispered to myself like a prayer, like I was bargaining. Just let me get out. Just let me see the road. Just let me live. The match burned closer to my skin. I felt the heat sting my fingertips and tears welled in my eyes. The thought of blowing it out terrified me, because what if that light was the only thing keeping me here, keeping me real? I pinched the ember to make it last, but it seared my skin and dropped into the dirt. Darkness. Complete crushing. My breathing was the only sound I recognized, but beneath it, threaded through the trees, were whispers. Not one, not two, dozens too many. Some were high-pitched, almost childlike. Some were low, guttural, some mimicked laughter, and then woven into them my friends' voices. Chris calling my name, Mia sobbing, Tyler gasping like he was still mid-scream. And then all at once, they fell silent. I froze, my ears strained. The clearing was holding its breath. Then from the tree line, every voice, every single one, layered into a wall of sound, spoke together. Not loud, not a roar, just a whisper, soft as the first breath of morning, and somehow that made it worse. Now you're ours. The air pressed in on me, cold and heavy. My knees buckled. And the last thing I remember before the dark swallowed me whole was the smell, not sulfur, not smoke, but damp earth, freshly turned like an open grave waiting to be filled. If you're listening to this, then maybe you've seen it too. Maybe you've walked down a hallway that wasn't the same length it was yesterday. Maybe the place you thought was home, safe, familiar, comforting, started to change the moment the lights went out. My name is Morgan, and I'm leaving this behind as a warning, because once it starts, you can't stop it. Once the hallway begins to stretch, it doesn't end. Everyone calls me Morgan. I live in a house that's been in my family for decades. A plain, two-story home with beige siding and a sagging porch swing that squeaks when the wind hits it. From the street, it looks ordinary, like the kind of place you'd pass every day and never notice. But inside, the house has a personality of its own. I used to think that was just me being sentimental. My mom loved to say, "Houses remember." She'd pat the wall in the kitchen whenever she said it, like she was soothing it. As a kid, I laughed. But when you spend enough nights alone in a place, you start to wonder if she was right. I moved back in after Mom died. Cancer. I told myself I was doing it to help Dad, so he wouldn't rattle around in here alone, but part of me wonders if it was the other way around. Maybe I couldn't let go of the house. Maybe I couldn't let go of her. During the day, the house is fine. Bright, even cozy. Sunlight cuts across the living room, warming the couch cushions. The smell of old wood lingers, but in a way that feels comforting, familiar. But nighttime has always been different. Even when I was a child, I hated the upstairs hallway. It's just a simple stretch connecting the bedrooms, the kind of hallway every house has. But it always felt too dark, even with the light on. Too still, like the air didn't move right. When I was little, I swore it got longer if you stared too long. I remember standing in the bathroom doorway once, my toothbrush dangling from my mouth, looking down that hallway. I could see my bedroom door at the end, but it seemed so far away. I told myself it was just my imagination. My brother Nate teased me, said the hallway goblin was waiting if I didn't run back fast enough. He thought it was funny. I didn't. I would flick the switch and sprint, feet slapping against the carpet, my heart pounding until I slammed my door behind me. The shadows seemed to chase me. That was decades ago. I should have grown out of it, and I thought I did, until recently. Now, at 29, I know what perspective is. I know what tricks the brain can play when you're overtired. I teach high school English. I've explained optical illusions to students, the way your eyes can distort what you think you see. But explanations don't help anymore. Because lately, when I turn off the bathroom light and look down the hallway, my stomach twists the same way it did when I was 8. Except now, the hallway really does look longer. Not just longer, darker too. The light bulbs don't reach as far as they used to. I changed them last week, swore to myself it was just old bulbs burning out, but the glow still dies before the end of the hall. Shadows pool deeper, thicker. The doors look farther apart too, like the space between them stretches when I'm not looking. Sometimes, when I'm standing at one end, the door to my room seems impossibly far away, like I'd never get there without running. And the strangest thing, when I walk it, it takes longer than it should, not just feels longer. It is longer. I've counted my steps. 16 steps used to take me from the bathroom to my bedroom. Now it's 23, sometimes 27. Each night the number changes, always higher. Dad doesn't notice. He's a heavy sleeper, goes to bed early, TV droning in his room until it lulls him under. He hasn't walked the hallway late at night in years. But I notice, and I feel it too. The air at the far end is colder. My skin prickles when I pass the halfway mark, like static brushing over me. The carpet feels rougher under my bare feet, almost sharp. And the smell, this is the part that gets me. The smell changes. Closer to my room, it's just the house, detergent, carpet cleaner, dust. But the farther I walk, the stronger it gets. Dust, rot, something sour, like a crawl space left sealed too long. And then there are the sounds. I used to think it was the floorboard settling, or maybe my own breathing echoing weirdly. But last night, when I turned off the light and started back toward my room, I heard footsteps behind me. Not the creak of old wood, not echoes, actual footsteps. Soft, bare, delayed like someone following mine but just slightly off. I froze halfway, my pulse hammered in my ears. When I turned around, the hallway behind me stretched into shadow. No one was there. But I swear, I saw a flicker of movement, not at the far end, not in the shadows, but closer, just past the bathroom door. A dark outline that vanished the second I focused. I ran back to my room that night like a child again, slammed the door, locked it even though I never lock it. And as I lay in bed, forcing myself to breathe slow, I remembered something Mom used to say when she thought I wasn't listening. She'd whisper it to Dad after dark, in that same upstairs hallway when they thought Nate and I were asleep. She'd say, "Do you ever feel like it's watching us?" And now, lying here decades later, I think I know what she meant. The first time I really questioned myself was 3 nights ago. I had stayed up late grading essays, my desk lamp throwing tired yellow light across papers that all smelled faintly of pencil lead and teenage sweat. When I finally shut down my laptop, it was past midnight. Dad was long asleep. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the fridge downstairs. I switched off the lamp and padded into the hallway. I told myself, count, just count. 16 steps. That's how long it should take, always 16. I was going to prove to myself I was imagining things. So I started, 1, 2, 3. The carpet rough beneath my feet, each fiber catching slightly. 4, 5. My own breathing loud in my ears. 6, 7. That's when I heard it. 8, 9. A creak behind me, sharp and deliberate, like a bare foot shifting its weight. 10, 11. The smell hit me then, faint but unmistakable, sour, metallic, almost like a nosebleed that had dried on cloth. 12. I turned around. The hallway stretched behind me into black. The bathroom door was there, faintly outlined by the nightlight I'd plugged in. But past it, darkness. It wasn't just shadow, it was depth, like staring down a well. I couldn't see the end. 13, 14. My pulse thundered as I forced myself forward. When I finally reached my bedroom door, I counted 24 steps. My mouth was dry, my hands slick with sweat. I kept whispering 16. It should have been 16. Like saying it enough times could snap reality back into place. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the hallway stretching, walls pulling farther and farther apart until the doors melted into the dark. The next morning, I asked Dad if he'd noticed anything strange. He was in the kitchen pouring cereal, his thinning hair sticking up at odd angles. I asked casually, like it was just conversation. "Hey, does the hallway ever feel different to you?" He gave me a look over the rim of his glasses. Different how? Like longer at night. He chuckled, the way old men do when they think you're being silly. This house has been the same since the day we moved in. But then his face changed, just for a second. His eyes flicked toward the ceiling, toward the direction of the hall, and I swear he hesitated, like something had crossed his mind. Then he shook it off and said, "You're tired, need to get more sleep." But that flicker, that pause, has been eating at me ever since. The second time, 2 nights later, I made a mistake. I tried to walk to the end. It was almost 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep again. I stood in my doorway staring out into the hallway, lit only by that weak nightlight near the bathroom. The shadows seemed thicker than ever. The air felt cold, heavy, like breathing through a damp cloth. So I told myself, do it, just walk, go all the way, prove it's just in your head. I stepped out, counted. 1, 2, 3. The air grew colder with each step. 7, 8. The carpet under my feet felt damp. I crouched, touched it with my fingers. My skin came away dry, but it still felt damp. 9, 10. The smell was stronger now, dust and rot, like something had been left in the walls to spoil. 13, 14. That's when I heard it. Breathing. Not mine, deeper, slower, coming from farther down. I froze, my throat tightening. My skin crawled with goose flesh. I whispered, "Dad." Nothing. Then faintly, a sound like fabric shifting, the rustle of someone moving in bed, but not from his room, from farther, much farther, down where the hall had no end. I turned, heart hammering, and ran. But here's the part that chilled me worse than anything. No matter how fast I ran, the door to my room stayed the same distance away. Like the hall was stretching in front of me, refusing to let me back. It wasn't until I screamed, actually screamed, that my hand finally closed around the knob. I shoved inside, slammed the door, locked it, pressed my back to the wood. The footsteps came next. Slow, measured, one after another, coming closer. Stopping right outside my door. The smell seeped through the crack at the bottom, stronger. Sour, rotten, unmistakably human. I covered my mouth with both hands, forcing myself not to sob out loud. The footsteps lingered for what felt like forever, then silence. I didn't open the door until morning. That's when I remembered something. Back when Mom was sick, toward the end, she had stopped sleeping in her room. She told Dad she felt restless, that the bed made her uncomfortable. She slept on the couch downstairs instead. But one morning, when she thought I was still asleep, I heard her whisper to Dad, "I don't want to walk the hallway anymore." Her voice had been trembling. Dad hushed her, told her she was imagining things, but now I don't think she was. The last night was the worst. Because last night, I swear I saw something. I woke to the sound of creaking. The faint, rhythmic groan of floorboards, someone walking. I sat up, heart pounding, listening. The footsteps were in the hallway. Slow, steady, getting closer. I thought it had to be Dad, maybe up for the bathroom, but then I heard something else. A whisper. So faint I almost convinced myself I imagined it. A woman's voice, hissing right outside my door. "Do you feel it watching you?" The exact words my mother used to say. I lay frozen, paralyzed as my door handle twitched, just slightly, metal rattling as though someone was testing the lock. Then silence. When I finally dared to get up, dawn was bleeding through the curtains. The house smelled of dust. My door handle was damp, as if a sweaty palm had held it all night. I don't know how much longer I can take this. The hallway is longer tonight, I can feel it, even without opening the door. It presses against the house, stretching, waiting. And I know, if I step out there again, it'll take me with it. I tried to tell myself I wouldn't open the door, that I'd stay in my room, headphones on, lights bright, blanket tight around me until morning. But the house doesn't let you ignore it. Around 2:17 a.m. the hum began. At first I thought it was the fridge downstairs, maybe the water heater. But the sound wasn't coming from below, it was seeping through the walls of the hallway. A low, vibrating hum, like someone running a wet finger around the rim of a glass. I pressed my ear to my door, trembling. The hum grew louder. And underneath it, faint thumps. Thud, 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 like someone knocking slowly, not on my door, but on every door down the hall. 1. Pause. 2. Pause. 3. Moving closer. I backed away, hands over my mouth, heart stuttering. The knocks stopped when they reached me. Silence. Then something slid across the carpet outside my door. A dragging sound, soft but unmistakable, like bare feet pulling along the floor. The hum cut off suddenly, and in its absence I realized I could hear breathing again. Slow, heavy, right outside. I whispered, so quiet I could barely hear myself. Dad. The breathing stopped. For a full minute there was nothing, no sound at all. My ears rang in the silence. Then, without warning, the light under my door went black. I had left the hallway nightlight plugged in, but now it was out. Something was standing in front of it. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't do anything but stare at that strip of dark where faint gold should have been. Then in the dark the whisper came back. Not my mother's this time, no. This was deeper, harsh, male. It gets longer when you look. The handle jerked hard. I gasped and stumbled back against my dresser, knocking papers to the floor. My lamp flickered, dimmed, almost went out before sputtering back to life. The handle rattled again. I was certain it was about to open, that whatever was out there was going to walk in. But it didn't. Instead, it let go. The strip of gold light reappeared beneath the door as if the figure had stepped away, no longer blocking the nightlight. Except here's the part that breaks me. The light didn't return to normal, it stretched. That faint bar of glow elongated across the floor, thinner and thinner, as if being pulled farther down an endless hallway. I dropped to the floor, watching it retreat until there was no trace of it left. Darkness, silence. Only my own ragged breathing. The next morning, the hallway looked normal again. 16 steps, bright, harmless. But I know the truth now. It's not about walking it. It's not about counting steps. It's about attention. The hallway changes when you acknowledge it, when you test it, when you doubt yourself. And last night I stared too long. I know what it wants now. It's waiting for me to walk all the way to the end. And I think tonight I'm going to. Morning light streamed in through the curtains, warm and golden like it always did. Birds chirped in the oak outside. For a fleeting moment, I believed it had all been a nightmare. The hallway, the whispers, the stretching light, just dreams. I opened my bedroom door carefully, bracing for something impossible. But it was fine. 16 steps, white-painted walls, family photos hanging in their frames. At the far end, I could see the linen closet door, shut tight, just as it should be. Normal. I laughed, a brittle, too loud laugh that startled me. Downstairs, the smell of coffee drifted up. Mom humming in the kitchen, the faint crinkle of Dad's newspaper at the dining table. Home. Safe. But every step down the stairs felt staged, like I was walking onto a set. I touched the banister, solid wood under my palm, but my mind whispered, what if it stretches too? I tried to push it down. Morning, Mom said brightly, sliding a plate of eggs onto the table. Morning, I croaked. Dad glanced up over his glasses. You look like hell, you sleep at all. I forced a smile, not really. Too much late-night TikTok, he teased, shaking the newspaper. Yeah, I lied. Because how could I explain it? The hallway grew longer. Something whispered through the door. I think the house is alive. No, I couldn't. I sat poking at my eggs, nodding absently at whatever small talk they were making. My eyes kept flicking toward the ceiling, toward the hallway above us. And I swear once, just once, I heard it. A faint creak above our heads, like a slow footstep. I froze. But Mom and Dad didn't notice. The normal morning sounds carried on. Forks scraping plates, the kettle hissing, my mom's humming. The creak didn't repeat. I swallowed hard and shoved a forkful of eggs into my mouth, pretending I hadn't heard anything at all. That afternoon, I tried to distract myself. Homework, laundry, scrolling my phone until my eyes blurred. But every time I passed the bottom of the stairs, my gaze lifted unbidden to the top landing, to that hallway. And I realized something that nearly made me drop my phone. The upstairs light was on. I hadn't left it on. I knew I hadn't. And worse, the glow spilling down the stairs looked wrong. Too faint, too yellow, like the bulb was buzzing from a great distance. I told myself not to go check. But I did. Halfway up the stairs, my heart hammered so loud I thought my parents would hear it from the living room. I reached the top. The light was on. But the hallway looked longer. Not nighttime longer, not endless, but maybe 20 steps instead of 16. I counted 3 times. 20 every time. I backed down the stairs slowly, gripping the banister so hard my knuckles burned. That's when it hit me. The hallway wasn't waiting for night anymore. It was growing during the day too. And that night, I knew there'd be no pretending. I had to see where it led. That night, I didn't bother trying to sleep. What was the point? The hallway was waiting. I sat on the edge of my bed for hours, the red glow of my digital clock crawling toward midnight. My phone sat useless beside me, dark and dead. I hadn't charged it. Maybe I hadn't wanted to. What comfort could a screen offer me now? When the house fell silent, Dad's faint snores through the wall, the heater kicking off, the hum of the fridge 2 stories below, I stood and opened my door. The hallway stretched before me, yawning into shadow. 16 steps was gone. 20 was gone. Now it was endless. The ceiling bulb near my door buzzed faintly, casting a circle of weak yellow light. But beyond it, just black. As if the hallway had no walls anymore, no ceiling, no floor, just carpet fading into nothingness. I pressed my bare foot down. The rug fibers scratched my skin, solid, real. Step 1. I whispered aloud, just to break the silence, to remind myself I still existed. 16 steps. Step 2. The bulb behind me flickered. Step 3. The glow of the landing receded, shrinking like it was being pulled backward. Step 4. The smell of dust grew stronger, damp, stale, like a room sealed shut for decades. Step 5. I paused, my breath fogged in front of me. The air was colder, much colder. And then, a sound. Step, step. Not mine. I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs. The sound had matched me exactly, just a fraction behind. When I stopped, it stopped. I whipped my head around. No one was there, just the shrinking square of yellow light at the start of the hall. I swallowed hard, my throat burned. "Just the house settling," I whispered. My voice sounded pitiful small. "Step 6. Step. Step 7. Step." Every step I took was echoed. But the echo didn't fade. It grew sharper, heavier, like someone or something was catching up. I began to walk faster. My bare feet slapped the carpet. Slap, slap, slap. The echo followed. The hallway stretched on. The light above me dimmed, bulbs fizzling one by one into darkness. I passed doors I didn't recognize, doors with no knobs, doors too small for anyone to fit through. One had deep scratches clawed into the wood, curling down toward the floor. I walked faster, my breath came in ragged bursts, my chest ached. Slap, slap, slap. The echo was right behind me now. And then a whisper. "Morgan." I stumbled, my name, spoken in a voice I knew. Mom's voice. I turned wild-eyed. The light behind me had gone out. I was standing in total blackness. But I felt it. Hot breath against the back of my neck. I screamed. And ran. For what felt like hours, I ran. My lungs seared, my legs trembled, but I couldn't stop. The hallway pulsed around me, the carpet rippling like waves under my feet. At last ahead I saw it. A door. Ordinary, white-painted, just like any door in the house. Light seeped faintly from beneath it, warm golden. Safety. I lunged forward, sobbing with relief. I grabbed the knob. It was ice cold. My fingers stuck to the metal, burning with frost. I twisted and shoved the door open. And stumbled through. And froze. I was standing at the top of the stairs. Back at the beginning of the hallway. Only this time. Every bedroom door was gone. The walls stretched into a single, endless tunnel of black. And behind me, just at the edge of hearing, a chorus of whispers rose. "Morgan, Morgan, Morgan." I stood frozen at the top of the stairs, my chest heaving, tears burning my eyes. No doors. No sign of my room or my parents' room or the bathroom, nothing. Just smooth walls, painted the same dull off-white, stretching forward into shadow. The hallway had eaten everything. "No, no, no," I whispered, clutching at the wall. My fingernails scraped the paint, searching for a seam, a crack, any sign that a door had once been there. Nothing. I spun back toward the staircase, toward the one anchor that should still exist. The steps were there, but they too were wrong. Too steep. Too dark. I leaned forward, peering down, and my stomach dropped. The staircase didn't end at the living room. It spiraled downward, far, far into black. Like a pit. I stumbled back, slamming against the wall. A sob clawed its way out of my throat. "This isn't real," I gasped. "This isn't real, it's..." Whisper, whisper, whisper. The sound rose again. But it wasn't just one voice anymore. Dozens, layered, overlapping, too close. Like people standing shoulder to shoulder in the dark, leaning in, their lips almost brushing my ear. "Morgan. Stay. Come. Down." The air grew heavier, damp. Each breath filled my lungs with the sour stench of rot. I pressed my hands over my ears. "Stop it, stop." But the whispers didn't stop. Instead, the carpet beneath my bare feet shifted, soft at first like it was settling under my weight, then rippling. Like something moving underneath. I screamed and leapt back. My heel slammed into the baseboard, pain shot up my leg. And then I saw it. Far down the hallway, at the very edge of sight, the outline of a figure. Still silent. Watching. My throat closed. I couldn't scream again. The figure didn't move closer. It didn't need to. The shadows pulsed and swallowed around it, making it blur in and out, like it was breathing with the hallway itself. I turned and ran back toward the staircase, desperate, my hands clutching the rail. I didn't care anymore. Pit or not, I would rather fling myself down than face what was behind me. But when I looked again, the stairs were gone. Just more hallway. Endless. The figure's whisper crawled into my skull. "You'll never leave." I don't know how long I stood there, my back to the wall, whispering to myself like a child, "Wake up, wake up, wake up." But I never did. The figure never moved closer. It just waited, and maybe that was worse, like it knew I'd break before it needed to lift a finger. My legs trembled, my throat was raw. I wanted my mom. I wanted my dad. I wanted the smell of coffee in the morning, the sound of the TV downstairs, the creak of our front door. Normal things. Safe things. But they were gone. I forced myself forward, one step, then another. My toes curled against the rough carpet, every inch of me screaming to stop, but I couldn't, not anymore. The hallway wanted me to walk. And after what felt like hours, I saw it, a door. Just one. Plain white, exactly like every bedroom door I'd grown up with. My chest shook with relief. Tears ran hot down my cheeks. I grabbed the handle and twisted, throwing it open with all the strength left in me. Light spilled out. Warm yellow light. I stepped through, gasping, only to stagger back, choking on a sob. Because I was standing at the start of the hallway again. Same off-white walls, same carpet, same dim bulb flickering overhead. Except this time, there were no doors at all. Not behind me, not ahead. Just hallway. Endless. And then I heard it. Not whispers this time. Footsteps. Not mine. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Coming up behind me. I didn't turn, I couldn't, my whole body locked. The air went cold, brushing the back of my neck. A breath sour and damp filled my ear. And then, in a voice that was not my own. "You live here now." The light overhead flickered once, twice, and went out. If you are hearing this, it means I didn't make it out. My name is Ethan. I loved hiking. I loved the solitude of wild places, the way silence felt like a gift. But the silence in the cave wasn't silence at all. It was waiting, breathing. And I want you to know what I saw before the darkness swallowed me. Because the dark isn't empty. It never was. I've been hiking since I was a teenager. It's where I feel most myself, away from the noise, the endless chatter of cities, the artificial glow of screens. Out there, under the sky, I can breathe. That morning started like any other trip. Backpack, headlamp, extra batteries, water, a protein bar or two. I've been studying a wilderness map for months, tracing the faded gray veins of cave systems sketched by long-gone surveyors. One in particular called to me. A narrow limestone cave deep in a valley that barely had a name. The locals mentioned it once like a passing shadow. Most shrugged it off. A few didn't. When I asked an old man at a gas station about it, he just shook his head and muttered, "That place closes on you, swallows people whole." I laughed it off, but a chill followed me all the way there. By midday, I was deep inside. The mouth of the cave shrank behind me, the light of day thinning into nothing. Soon, it was just me and the beam of my flashlight. The cave was narrow, oppressive. My shoulders scraped stone as I squeezed through passages no wider than a coffin lid. The smell was heavy, wet rock, iron, and something faint, something I couldn't name. I told myself it was just earth rot, old mineral seepage. But the deeper I went, the stronger it got. The first strange thing happened maybe an hour in. My beam caught movement, not ahead, not behind, but right beside me, as though something shifted inside the rock itself. A pebble rolled near my boot. My breath echoed strangely, not like an echo but like someone breathing with me. I stopped. The cave stopped. The drip of water fell silent. That's when I felt it for the first time. The weight of the earth pressing down. Not just the stone above my head, but the suffocating realization that I was inside the planet, beneath tons of unyielding rock. If the light died, if the cave shifted, I'd never see the sky again. I should have turned back then, but I didn't. The cave seemed to know I'd chosen wrong. The walls narrowed. My flashlight beam wavered against claw-shaped stone formations. They weren't natural, not to my eyes. Jagged spikes reached out as if they'd been frozen mid-motion, trying to grab. I kept going deeper, drawn by some terrible pull I couldn't name. Every step became sound, scrape of boot, grit crunching, breathing, always breathing, except it didn't sound like mine anymore. Sometimes it came from behind me, slow and heavy, sometimes from above. Once, I swear, right at my ear. I shouted. My voice broke apart and the stone, twisted, came back wrong. Like someone mocking me, whispering the syllables half a second too late. I told myself it was acoustics, that caves could bend sound. But a colder truth pressed at the edges of my mind. Someone else was down there, or something. Hours or minutes, I couldn't tell, slipped by. My water was low. My hands scraped raw against wet rock, nails packed with grit. My flashlight flickered, just once, just enough to make my stomach seize. I dug for the spare batteries, dropped one. The clink rang like a gunshot. In that second of bending to grab it, I smelled it stronger, rot. Not old rot, fresh, like meat just gone bad. And then came the sound. Stones tumbling as if something moved deeper inside. I froze. Light beam trembling, I lifted it toward the noise. The beam struck the far wall, and for the briefest instant I saw a smear, a mark, like a handprint, but larger than mine, wet, glistening. I ran my hand across it. It was still slick, warm. I should have left then, but I couldn't. Curiosity, fear, maybe both. I pressed on. The passages twisted tighter. My body shook with each squeeze, chest flattening, ribs scraping rock. My heartbeat echoed louder than the dripping water. And then the light died. 1 second it was there, the next it was gone. Darkness absolute. I've never known a darkness like that, not night dark, not close your eyes dark. This was heavier. I held my hand in front of my face. Nothing. The dark wasn't empty, it was thick, smothering. My breath quickened, panic clawed at my throat. I fumbled with the batteries, hands trembling. Something scraped behind me, a shuffle, a pebble kicked, and then a breath. Not mine. Right beside me. I jammed the batteries in, slapped the flashlight. It came alive for an instant, enough to show me the wall inches from my face, enough to reveal faintly another smear of wet handprint, higher this time, larger. Then darkness again. I screamed. The sound died in the stone. I don't know how long I sat there. Seconds, years, my body cramped, skin raw against damp rock. I pressed my forehead to the stone, whispering to myself, "Stay calm, stay calm, stay calm." But the breathing never stopped. Sometimes near, sometimes far, sometimes two breaths sinking with mine, then breaking apart like laughter held too long. I pressed my hands to my ears. Still I heard it, inside the cave, inside me. I crawled forward blindly, hands scraping jagged stone, nails tearing back. The smell grew unbearable, rot, meat, dampness thick as syrup. My knees sank into mud. No, not mud, something softer. My hand brushed something smooth, rounded, cold, a skull. I pulled back, choking, bile rising in my throat. The cave was filled with them. Skulls, bones, fragments grinding under my palms. I crawled faster, desperate. My body tore on stone. My lungs screamed. My flashlight rattled uselessly in my grip. And then it flickered one last time. For a heartbeat the cave lit up. Bones. Walls smeared with handprints, dozens of them, all sizes. and there ahead of me a figure crouched watching. Its outline was wrong, too long, too still. Its hand pressed to the wall, larger than mine, fresh, wet. The light died. Darkness swallowed everything. I froze, couldn't breathe, and then an exhale, not mine, right beside my ear. That was the last thing I saw, the last thing I heard. The last thing before the darkness took me. If you're listening to this, then maybe you've had the power go out at night too. Maybe you've walked down into your basement with nothing but your phone in your hand, telling yourself it's fine, it's nothing. That's what I told myself. My name's Michael, and I need you to know something. Because I swear to you, what I saw down there was real. And once you see a face in the dark, you never stop seeing it. You never stop hearing it breathe. This is Michael. I'm 37 years old. If you met me, you probably wouldn't remember me 5 minutes later. I'm that kind of man, not particularly remarkable. I work IT support for a mid-sized insurance firm. I mow my lawn every Saturday morning. I make dad jokes my kids groan at. My wife teases me for buying too many flashlights whenever we walk through a hardware store. I never thought my life would be the kind anyone would want to hear about. And I never thought I'd have a reason to record this. We live in a small, 2-story home on a quiet suburban street. Our neighbors are the sort who wave but don't talk long. The house itself is ordinary. Beige siding, squeaky front door hinge I keep meaning to fix, a basement that smells faintly of damp no matter how much baking soda I leave out. I used to think of that basement as just another part of the house. Inconvenient, cluttered, ugly, not scary. Basements are supposed to be where you put old toys, not where nightmares live. But looking back now, I realize there were signs. The first week after we moved in, our neighbor, a wiry old man named Harris, who never seemed to leave his porch, leaned over the fence and said, "You'll want to keep that basement locked up at night. Just a habit, you know. Old houses carry old noises." I laughed, assuming he meant creaks and groans, maybe the furnace. But his eyes didn't laugh. His eyes lingered, unblinking, on the basement windows like he expected something to be looking back. Even my wife, Sarah, had her moment. About a month in, she came upstairs from doing laundry, pale and unsettled. She said, "I swear I heard someone breathing down there, Mike. Like, really breathing, slow, heavy." I teased her, said she'd been listening to too many true crime podcasts. She didn't laugh. After that, she started asking me to switch the laundry for her at night. And the kids, well, kids say things. My daughter, Emily, once told me she didn't like the man in the corner of the basement. I asked what she meant, and she described a face she saw when the lights were off. A pale face, watching her. Of course, I brushed it off. Kids have imaginations. Basements are creepy, everyone knows that. But denial only works until the lights actually go out. It was a Thursday night, around 9:30, the kind of night where nothing should have happened. The kids were in bed. Sarah was reading upstairs, wrapped in her blanket like always. I was downstairs in the living room, halfway through a beer and an old rerun on TV. I remember it was one of those episodes I could quote line for line without watching. Then, in the middle of canned laughter, the house died. The TV snapped black, the fridge silenced, the faint hum of the heater cut. The sudden silence pressed in so hard I could hear my own heartbeat. Power outage, no big deal. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I grabbed my phone from the coffee table and thumbed on the flashlight app. The thin white beam cut across the living room, jittering in my hand. I remember thinking how pathetic it looked, barely a cone of light, swallowed by every shadow. And then I noticed something strange. The upstairs hall light had gone out, sure. The kitchen too. But the one bulb in the basement, the dim, dangling thing that never worked right, had been on before. Now it was. For some reason, that unsettled me more than the rest. Still, I did what I always do. I went to fix it. The basement door groaned when I opened it. The smell drifted up immediately, cool, damp, faintly metallic. I told myself it was mildew, pipes, old concrete, but it hit the back of my throat like copper pennies. The wooden stairs creaked under my weight. I've walked them hundreds of times, but that night each step felt louder, more invasive, like announcing myself to something waiting below. I swung the phone's beam across the basement, the unfinished concrete floor, the piles of boxes we never unpacked, the old washing machine in the corner. Nothing unusual, except the dark. I hadn't realized how much darker the basement felt without the ceiling bulb. My phone's beam barely pushed 10 feet ahead before dissolving into pitch black. The shadows weren't just shadows. They looked solid, as if the dark had weight, pooling in corners, clinging to the walls. And behind all of that, the breaker box. Just beyond the deepest patch of dark. I aimed the light toward it, squinting to make out the metal rectangle. That's when I froze. Because between me and the box, in the far corner where the dark was thickest, I thought I saw a face. Pale, almost glowing, eyes reflecting back faintly, like an animal caught in headlights. At first I told myself it was paint, or a reflection, or a trick of my tired eyes. But the longer I stared, the more certain I became. It wasn't a trick, it was watching me. And that was when I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. Slow, heavy, steady. Coming from the dark corner. I don't know how long I stood there on those stairs, staring into that corner. My phone beam trembled across concrete and cardboard, catching edges of junk, old boxes, a stack of unused tiles, the laundry machine's rusted side. Every shape looked hostile in the dark, but none of them explained the pale oval I swore I saw staring back at me. I whispered to myself, it's nothing, just shadows. But the problem was, I could hear it. The breathing. Slow, heavy, measured. Like someone trying not to be noticed. I tightened my grip on the railing, sweat sliding down my back, despite the chill of the basement air. My throat felt like sandpaper. I aimed the beam deliberately into the corner. I told myself if I just looked straight at it, the face would dissolve, a trick of the eyes like clouds forming animals. But the light didn't dissolve it. The pale oval remained, faint but undeniable. And the longer I looked, the more I thought I could see details. Dark hollows where eyes should be, a curve of a mouth slightly open. And then blink. I swear to God it blinked. My whole body locked. My thumb jerked on the phone and the beam stuttered wildly across the wall. When it steadied again, the face was gone. Or maybe it had never been there. I tried to laugh, tried to swallow the terror like a man swallowing bitter medicine. Jesus, Mike, I muttered, you're freaking yourself out. It had to be exhaustion, the outage, maybe even my neighbor's warning sticking in the back of my head. Houses creak, basements echo, shadows look like faces. That was all. But the breathing hadn't stopped. If anything, it sounded closer. I forced myself down the last few steps, each creak of wood booming like a gunshot. My phone beam swept the floor in jerky arcs. The concrete was damp in patches. Dust clung to my socks. The smell hit stronger now, mildew, stale laundry, and that sharp metallic tang, like pennies held in the mouth too long. I wrinkled my nose and coughed. Pipes, I told myself, rust, old iron in the water. My eyes darted everywhere except that corner. I scanned the shelves piled with old paint cans, the narrow window slits near the ceiling, the washer and dryer. Every shadow twitched in my peripheral vision. And then I saw something strange near the center of the floor. A toy. An old plastic fire truck. My son's toy, but it wasn't supposed to be here. I remembered packing it in a box weeks ago, planning to donate it. That box sat against the far wall, and yet the fire truck was sitting alone on the concrete. I crouched, beam fixed on it. Dust ringed its wheels, but the truck itself was clean, as if it had just been placed there. A chill ran down my arms. "Sarah," I called softly, even though I knew she was upstairs. My voice cracked in the silence. No answer. I picked up the truck with a shaking hand, holding it in the beam. The plastic was cold, too cold, like it had been sitting outside in winter air. Behind me, floorboards creaked. I spun, the beam cutting wildly across the basement ceiling and back to the stairs. Empty. But the creak wasn't above. It had been behind me, on the basement floor. I swung the light across the far wall and froze. The face was there again. Closer now. Not in the corner, but a few feet nearer to the breaker box. Paler than before, eyes reflecting unnaturally like two beads of wet glass. I staggered back, the toy clattering to the floor. My phone almost slipped from my hand. "Hello," I croaked, even though my voice trembled. "Who's there?" The breathing answered, steady, patient. I forced myself forward, every step feeling like I was dragging my body through molasses. I told myself, get to the breaker, flip it, flood the basement with light. That's all, just light. The air pressed colder the nearer I got. My skin prickled damp. My heartbeat thundered so loud I could barely hear. I reached the breaker box. My fingers found the cold metal lip. The face was right beside it now, inches from my hand. I aimed the beam full into the dark. For a second I swore I saw more than a face. Shoulders, arms, a figure crouched, watching me from within the shadows as if the dark itself was its skin. My vision swam. I wanted to vomit. I told myself I was hallucinating, just flip the switch, just flip it. And then my phone buzzed. A notification, sudden and sharp. My heart nearly stopped. The light shifted for a fraction of a second, and in that blink, I saw the face move. It leaned. Closer. Its mouth stretched open wider, as if grinning. And it whispered my name. Michael. I staggered back, hands slamming against the breaker. The switch snapped up. The basement exploded with light. Every dangling bulb along the beams flared on at once. The shadows ripped away like a veil. The concrete floor stretched out in every direction, harmless, cluttered with boxes and shelves. The corner was empty. The face was gone. I sagged against the breaker box, lungs heaving. My body trembled with the kind of exhaustion you feel after almost being hit by a car, shaky, hysterical relief. I let out a laugh, though it cracked halfway out of my throat. "Jesus Christ, Mike," I whispered to myself, "you really lost it this time." I looked around at the plain basement, the old washer and dryer, the paint cans stacked crookedly, the kids' boxes of toys, nothing sinister, just junk. The fire truck was still in the middle of the floor. I picked it up again. In the bright basement light it looked ordinary, just a cheap red toy my son had outgrown. I told myself I must have forgotten moving it, probably brought it down here myself one night without remembering. Everything had an explanation. Shadows, stress, imagination. That was all. And yet, I couldn't stop glancing at the corner, the one I'd seen the face in. I studied the bare wall, the seam where concrete met floor, the water stain running like a dark vein down to the baseboard. It was empty, but the longer I stared, the more I felt something. As if the emptiness itself was watching me. I shook my head, laughed again, forced myself to move. "Done," I muttered, "powers back, problem solved." I started toward the stairs. My footsteps echoed too loudly in the bright basement, bouncing back at me. My hand gripped the railing, ready to climb back into the safety of the kitchen light. That's when it happened. Every bulb snapped off. Not one by one, not a flicker, all at once, as if an invisible hand had crushed the entire house in its palm. Darkness roared back, heavier this time, absolute. The silence was deafening. My phone, it had been in my hand. I fumbled desperately, thumb scrambling at the screen. The flashlight app refused to open. The screen stuttered, then died. The battery had been at 60%. Now it was blank. I stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, my chest squeezed, my ears strained. That's when I heard it. Breathing. Slow, deliberate. Right behind me. I whipped around, hands trembling in the dark. My voice cracked. Who's there? The silence stretched. Then the breathing answered. A long, deep inhale. A slower, longer exhale, so close I could feel the air stir against the back of my neck. I staggered backward, shoulders slamming into the stair rail. My heart hammered so violently I thought it would burst. "Sarah," I shouted, throat raw. "Sarah, call the police." But my voice barely seemed to leave my throat. It was like the basement swallowed the sound whole. Somewhere above me, faintly, I thought I heard her stir. A muffled voice, but before I could scream again, the boards under my feet creaked. Not from me. From something shifting its weight in the dark. I scrambled up the stairs blindly, hands clawing the rail. My foot slipped on the second step, shin cracking against wood. Pain flared white-hot, but I didn't care. I pulled myself up anyway, crawling. Halfway up I froze. Because I realized something. The breathing hadn't stayed behind. It was still there. Right at my ear. Hot, damp, impossibly close. I didn't turn, couldn't. My body locked, my throat seized, tears burned in my eyes. And then in that dark silence, I heard it whisper again. My name. Michael. I lunged the rest of the way up the stairs, slamming the basement door behind me with all the strength I had. The house above was pitch black too, every room, every hallway. And in the silence that followed, I heard the floor creak, slowly, patiently. Coming up the stairs. That's where I'll stop, because after that I don't know what happened. Maybe you'll say I imagined it. Maybe you'll say I had a breakdown in the dark, but I know what I heard. I know what breath behind me. And I know one thing for certain. If you ever see a face in the basement shadows, don't look at it too long, because once you see it, it never lets you go. Imagine stepping into a place that was never meant to end. No exits, no stations, just a tunnel swallowing light, sound, and sanity. The deeper you go, the less you remember what it felt like to see daylight, and the breathing you hear isn't your own. This isn't folklore. This isn't urban legend. This is the tunnel where darkness never ends. And once you're inside, you'll never walk out the same way again, if you walk out at all. The first mistake was saying yes. It was Jason's idea, like most bad ideas were. Loud, reckless, restless. He was the kind of guy who didn't believe in danger until it had its teeth around your throat. An abandoned subway line, he said, grinning over his beer. They built it in the 70s but sealed it after an accident. Nobody knows why. Whole thing's just sitting there underground, untouched. We should check it out. I should have laughed. I should have said no. But I didn't. Because when you're 26 and tired of people calling you boring, you do things just to prove them wrong. Emily, Jason's girlfriend, looked at me with that sharp, raised eyebrow look that meant if you don't go, he'll go alone, and you'll regret it when he doesn't come back. She wasn't a thrill seeker, not really, but she had a streak of stubbornness that ran deeper than sense. So that's how it ended up being the three of us. A night in early October. Flashlights, backpacks, too much bravado, and one rusted service hatch that smelled of mildew and rot. The second I climbed inside, I knew I didn't belong there. The air was still, heavy, the kind that settles in your lungs like wet sand. Jason laughed. Smells like history. But to me, it smelled like something waiting. The first stretch wasn't terrifying, just wrong. Cracked tiles lined the walls, curling away like peeling skin. Tracks sat rusted into the concrete floor, but no dust gathered, no rats scurried, no dripping water echoed in the dark. The silence pressed, not just quiet, thicker than quiet, the kind of silence that swallows. Emily's light shook in her hand, feels like it's listening. Jason laughed too loud, too forced. It's a tunnel, Em. It echoes, that's what it does. But it didn't echo right. Our footsteps came back to us, but slower, offbeat. Like something else was walking with us. We had been walking 10 minutes when we heard it. Breathing. Not ours. Ours came fast, nervous, shallow. This one was slower, wet. A drag of air followed by a rattle. We froze. Jason spun his flashlight in a wide arc. Nothing. The beam cut just a few feet ahead before vanishing, swallowed whole by the dark. Emily's voice trembled. Air vents, maybe. But no wind moved. No sound shifted. The air sat still as stone. That was the first time I thought, this isn't empty, it's alive. We walked and walked and walked. Jason checked his phone. An hour gone, we should have reached something, a junction, a wall, a platform. But there was nothing. The tunnel stretched the same in every direction. Emily whispered, "What if it doesn't end?" We laughed, weak, forced, but her words burrowed under my skin. Because when I looked back, the entrance was gone. Behind us was just more black. We stopped to rest. My legs trembled, my throat dry. That's when Emily noticed. "Your shadow," she whispered, eyes wide. I looked. It stretched against the wall, jagged, unnatural, too long for my flashlight's angle. And it moved. Not with me. Against me. Jason swore, "We're tired, that's all," but his voice shook. We stood ready to move, and that's when the tunnel sighed. A low exhale, long, heavy, like something massive breathing beneath our feet. The ground trembled, just a shiver, enough to remind us we weren't alone. Hours, or maybe minutes, later, my light caught something new. Scratches in the wall, hundreds, words carved deep into the concrete. "Let me out." "No end." "Still walking." "Nobody leaves." Jason touched one, fingers shaking. Had to be years ago. But the grooves were fresh, sharp. And at the bottom, carved deeper than the rest, was a name. Emily's. Sleep was impossible. We tried. Sat against the wall, lights aimed outward, but the dark pressed closer with every blink. That's when the voices began. Not loud, just a whisper, faint but clear. "My name's Sarah." Sometimes it was Emily's voice, sometimes Jason's. But their mouths weren't moving. Emily covered her ears. "Make it stop, please make it stop." Jason shouted into the dark, "Shut up." The tunnel listened. And then it laughed. Not loud, not clear, just the sound of our own laughter, bent and broken, echoing back a second too late. Jason tried to keep us moving. "Everything ends," he muttered. "It has to." We followed him, one step, another. And then he was gone. No scream, no sound. 1 second beside me, the next air. My flashlight caught only empty tunnel. Emily screamed. I grabbed her, shaking, whispering, "Don't stop, don't stop, don't stop." But her eyes were already glazed. She didn't last long after Jason. At first she just grew quieter. Her steps dragged, her flashlight beam shook. She muttered under her breath, words I couldn't quite catch. I slowed to listen. "They're saying my name," she whispered, over and over, like it's carved into the air. Her voice was raw, her throat torn from crying. I tried to steady her. "It's the echoes, it's just this place, don't listen to it." But the truth was I'd heard it too. My name, my voice, whispered in tones too familiar, too warped. She grabbed my arm suddenly, nails digging in. "Sarah, what if Jason isn't gone? What if he's just walking ahead? Maybe we'll catch him if we go faster." Her eyes gleamed with a desperate kind of hope. I nodded because what else could I do? We walked faster, then slower, then faster again. The tunnel never changed. No walls, no markings, no sense of progress. And then her hope cracked. Her steps faltered, her light dropped low. "It doesn't matter," she said flatly. "We're not following him, we're following it." She stopped walking, just stood there staring into the black. "Emily, please," my voice broke. "We can't stop if we stop." But she wouldn't move. "I've been here before," she whispered. A chill raced down my spine. "What are you talking about?" She turned toward me, her face pale, lips trembling. "I remember this wall." She lifted her light, shining it across the concrete. Carvings, deep, jagged scratches gouged into the stone. Words layered on top of each other, desperate and frenzied. "Help." "No light." "Forever." And at the bottom a name. Emily's name. Fresh. Her scream echoed, raw and ragged. I yanked her hand, pulling her away, but she resisted, stumbling, shaking her head violently. "It already knows me," she sobbed. "It's already written me down." And in that moment, I knew she was right. The tunnel had chosen her. We kept moving, though moving was an illusion. The tunnel never shifted, never turned, never ended. Just the same black throat swallowing us whole. Emily clung to me, her flashlight jerking wildly. Sometimes she would scream at the dark. Sometimes she would mutter prayers under her breath. Sometimes she would stop mid-step and tilt her head, listening. "It's breathing with us," she whispered once. "Not around us, with us." I wanted to deny it, but I heard it too. My breaths and hers, shaky and shallow, and a third one, deeper, slower, always a beat behind. We didn't speak after that. Words felt dangerous, like sound itself was bait. Hours passed, or days, I couldn't tell. My watch had stopped. My phone was dead. The only proof of time moving was the flicker of our flashlights, batteries draining. And then Emily's light died. It happened so suddenly, a sharp click in the silence, and then her beam was gone. She screamed, thrashing, clawing at me. "Turn it back on, Sarah, turn it back on." I tried to grab her, but she tore away, plunging into the black. Her screams echoed, twisted, bouncing back from every angle. They grew louder, then softer, then wrong. Until they weren't screams anymore. They were laughter. Jason's laughter. And then silence. Just me. Just me and the breathing. I don't know how long it's been since Emily vanished. Her body isn't here. Nothing is, just empty tunnel stretching forever. I've tried running, I've tried standing still. It doesn't matter. The tunnel is the same either way. Sometimes I think I see light far ahead, a faint glow. I run toward it, heart hammering, but it never gets closer. Sometimes I hear footsteps just behind me, slow, heavy. I spin, beam flashing, nothing there. Sometimes I hear my name. Sarah. Not whispered anymore, spoken, deep, patient. My flashlight flickers now. The battery is nearly gone. I don't pray for escape anymore. I don't even pray for daylight. I pray for the light to last just a little longer. Because I know what waits when it dies. The tunnel will still be here. And so will I.
As always, thanks for listening.